Well, this is what we call a real power lunch. And we're going to probably roll through a 50-minute conversation in what could actually be an entire Ideas Festival on its own. And one of the themes that we just wanted to pick up first as we think about why women now, as Lola laid out so beautifully about the role of women in communities, in countries, economies, and democracies, is to really, as the opening session really talked about, an inclusive economy, inclusive capitalism, the role of women when we think about economics, and really the future of our economy. And so just a couple grounding statistics that I want to just know that we are coming absolutely from a position of strength and full participation. I mean, right now, women comprise 41% of the labor force in the US. Women are 40% of the primary or only breadwinners in a family with children 18 and under. Women are making 80% of consumer purchasing decisions. Women are making all sorts of successes as entrepreneurs, employing, generating jobs, returning investments. And so why are we still seeing not the real shift in power, as Lola said? Too few women at the top, women at the bottom not receiving their full potential and opportunities. So we've got this area over here, and then we've got sort of what does the world look like and what does it take to shift mindsets and behaviors? And so we've got a very special executive leader here, Mila, who, home for her is Birmingham, Alabama.
That's right, Alabama.
And, you know, for us—
Alabama.
Mila has been an extremely successful lawyer, executive, philanthropist, civic leader in Birmingham, throughout Alabama, the Southeast, our country, and even going globally. And she's a pretty awesome mother. So I'd love for Mila, for you to kick us off from sort of sitting within the corporate arena. What are the shifts and the trends that are both energizing you and also alarming you?
Well, that's a lot. And first of all, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and so happy to see all of you here to engage in this conversation. And I want to really pick up on what you said specifically around shifting mindset and shifting behavior. And one of the things that I think is true, certainly in corporate environments, is behaviors can be shifted based on policy. And that has to happen. And sometimes mindsets follow that. And so what we have to do, I think, as leaders, those of us who are in the room, we have to show up and articulate that that is important for us to do. If you think about it, as sometimes I do, and I work for a company that is spending a lot of time now really thinking intentionally about what diversity and inclusion in leadership and pipelining looks like. But it's not a straight line, and it's not necessarily artfully done. And I think that we have to give ourselves patience and grace to move through a process that is uncomfortable for everyone to get to the place where we reflect the populations that we serve. And it's just hard work, but it's work that is worth doing and work that is worth talking about and activating.
Well, and Miley, I also want to mention that you're an Aspen Fellow, which
Yes.
really talks about how you lead with your values, how do you have the right conversation with the right leaders at the right time. And building on what you were just laying out there, you know, we've all heard a lot about equity and, about diversity and inclusion, which is incredibly important. And how do we, you know, where are you seeing both from within your company or even in Alabama or more broadly, some experiences you've had? What does it mean to shift it to going to justice and equity? And realizing, you know, Darren Walker, I think, named it really well at the opening session. When you get in the justice lane, you're sort of moved beyond charity or generosity.
Right.
You get a little uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's always easy in a corporate environment.
Yeah, being uncomfortable. We love that. So here's the thing. It's happening whether we talk about it or not. The discussions are happening. And so the magic is owning it and saying, this is a value that we have. You know, we think a lot of times, I was joking with one of my colleagues here, if you looked at most corporate structures, you would see predominantly white men in the room and a smattering, perhaps, of others. And I question what it would feel like were that to be reversed if you were a white man. So that is a question that is one to ask. Would you feel, if you are a white man, would you feel represented if the tables looked different? Put yourself in that position, and that can help inform how you think about creating a culture that is both reflective of a higher purpose, but quite frankly, will drive value to your bottom line. And I am not bothered by those who lean more into the driving value to your bottom line point of view than the other. I think you start where you start.
And I was wondering, kind of sharing a little bit about your personal journey, both, we talked a little bit about the magic of, you have different pipeline programs and training programs, but the importance of relationships and social capital, and even political capital, small p and big P, and financial capital. And so both giving you sort of invite to talk a little bit about opening those doors, both within women and diverse populations within corporations first, and then maybe also talking about, and you've really, Alabama Power with your leadership with other colleagues has been really groundbreaking in thinking about financial to communities of color and to women who have not normally been first at the table.
No. So inside the walls, I have a friend who said to me one day, Miley, you spend a lot of time talking about, the developing of talent among young women, and particularly among young women of color. And I said, yes, I do. Because someone needs to be intentional about that work. And I happen to be in a position where I can do that. And so I value that. That is not to say I don't value developing talent wherever it is. But when you have been in the position of knowing what it feels like to be unseen, there's an urgency to doing that work. Externally, what we are really excited about in the work that we do with the foundation that I'm honored to lead is making sort of strategic investments that look through the lens of creating equity in the platform to access. So that's investing in programs that cause the elevation of opportunity for people who normally don't get that break. That feeds in nicely with the work that we are doing as a cohort in the Ascend Fellowship that really looks at the two-generation model. What does it take to create families that have sustained success, or at least the opportunity for it? And so with that in mind, I really am excited about moving forward in the work we're doing in Alabama, which has great opportunity for work to be done to create equitable platforms for opportunity.
Well, and let's go to Alabama for a little bit.
Yes, and I invite you all there. It is a beautiful state. It is a beautiful state with beautiful, thoughtful, wonderful people and fantastic food.
Well, we had an amazing opportunity to be with you there just February of 2018, and had a really powerful conversation with Senator Doug Jones, arranged by in the basement of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, of incredible civil rights importance. And when we think about the lessons or the learnings and the challenges, both the Senate election of Doug Jones and who were some of the populations and maybe women and maybe black women that elected him. But what were some of the lessons that you're seeing coming out of Alabama that we should be paying attention to when we think about leadership, civic participation, kind of representation?
Wow. Okay. Well,
and for Alabama, one of the third largest employer for the state of Alabama.
What, Alabama Power?
Alabama Power.
Yes. So I will say this. One of the things that we know about that election, which I think what served as inspiration for the country in many respects, was that there was a swath in the map when the newscasters are showing blue county, red county. There's this swath like a belt that crossed from Mississippi to Georgia. And many people, I guess, who weren't from the South did not know that that area is called the Black Belt. Called that because of the richness of the soil. But it also is home to just the most desperate parts of poverty in our state. It is home to a place where Black women really galvanized to come forward and made the difference in that election. And so for those of us who were in the state, when we saw that the belt was white, we knew that Doug Jones had won. And of course, we saved the country from having Roy Moore as a senator. But so you're welcome. One of the things that leaves us with is where do we go from here, which I think is a perfect segue to the next segment around galvanizing women and women going forward in a political space.
Thank you so much, Mila. And as we're about to shift into a wonderful next part of this conversation with Cecile Richards and Alicia Garza and Peggy Clark. And I think, they're going to be talking about their new vision around supermajority, which is also taking a lot of this activism and power into the full arena of our civic life. And, one thought, and I'm going to ask you one more question, Mila, to leave everybody with some parting thoughts about kind of your vision or any advice or thoughts you have for what you wish for the next generation in but one moment. And so the one thing I want us just all to remember, and we're talking also a lot about narratives, who constructs the story? Where does the story begin? Who actually tells it? Who's allowed to be featured in it? And when I think back to 1920, where often you'll read, our country gave women the right to vote. Women fought hard to earn the right to vote. And there are many other stories that we could say were just a little shift of the narrative. And so as we really think about the urgency and the opportunity for now, I think I invite all of you, you are all incredibly powerful leaders in your own spheres of influence, to think about this day now going forward. What's your vision for the next generation? And Mila, maybe one value and one thought you have as we leave you all and bring Peggy and Cecile and Alicia up to the stage, but your hopes and dreams.
So there are too many to say, but what I would say is, as we go forward in the work that we do, whatever it is, I think it is important never to let the programming of it disrupt the purpose of it. Sometimes we can get so formulaic that we forget what the North Star is. Hold fast to that, because the other things may shift and change in between. So I would say that, and I would also say, let's not fall prey to the psychology of scarcity. That is to say that if one or two or three of us are in a room, that's enough. We should not fall prey to that. We must indeed lean into each other, support one another, lift up each other, correct one another when necessary, all in the spirit of love, and love.
Thank you, Mila. Beautiful ending. Well, in the spirit of love and moving forward together, I'd love to invite Peggy Clark, Cecile Richards, and Alicia Garza to the stage.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, how are you? We're delighted to have you with us. Thanks so much for showing up for this session. I am so honored to be sitting here with Alicia and Cecile, who are superheroes. Hashtag life goals, really, to be with them, for real. But they really need no introduction. But I think most of you know Cecile Richards was the former president of Planned Parenthood. She really helped to transform our national debate about that issue. Unfortunately, we're still fighting it, but she was just a remarkable leader for all of us. She began her career organizing low-wage workers in the hotel, healthcare, and janitorial industries. And Alicia Garza also needs no introduction. When she walked in, I said, I follow you every day on Facebook, so I know like what nail color polish you're wearing today. But Alicia's an incredible, she was one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matters. She's an Oakland-based dreamer, as she calls herself, organizer, writer, public speaker. She's working as a special projects director for the National Domestic Health Workers Alliance, Domestic Workers Alliance, forgive me. And she, together with Cecile, have launched this amazing thing called Supermajority. So congratulations. For those of you who haven't seen the ad, it's amazing. So what is Supermajority? Why did you start it?
Great. Well, thanks for having us, Peggy. And we're missing one of our sort of three musketeers, and that's Ai-jen Poo, who I want to mention. She's a fabulous leader of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and it's the three of us plus some other women that really started Supermajority. And I'll take one cut at it, and would love Alicia to add hers as well. I'd been working at Planned Parenthood for many, many years, and I realized we built a really big and robust movement, and thanks to everyone who supports that organization. I also realized there were millions of women we weren't talking to about a lot of issues that were important. And what I had seen, I think we all saw post the 2016 election, was just everywhere I went, there was a women's group that had popped up. Badass babes in Bay City, Ohio, and Cafe Con Ladies in Houston. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of small women's organizations and women everywhere I went raising their hand and say, I want to do more, and I don't know what to do. And talking to Alicia, talking to Ai-jen, some of my colleagues at Planned Parenthood, I was like, we need to actually figure out how we galvanize this movement, because women are the supermajority in America. Not just the overwhelming majority of voters, but the majority of activists, the majority of organizers, increasingly candidates, and we need to figure out a way to galvanize all of this together. And that was really the conceit of Supermajority. And the question is not how do we create interest and energy, it's actually how do we deal with the tsunami of women who are coming out of the woodwork saying, I want to do more to change the direction of the country.
That's right. And I think the only other thing I would just add here is that there is already a movement that is in motion right now. And there is fire that is spreading across the country, whether it be with family separation, which I'm getting a ton of emails and texts about, what can I do, how can I be involved, sign me up. Whether it be, making sure that healthcare is being protected. I mean, I don't know about you all, but after... God, I just totally blanked on his name. Supreme Court dude. Thank you. Yes. I know, I was like... But after Kavanaugh was confirmed, right? I mean, the thing that just stays with me is the screams that we heard in the chamber. We do not consent. That is an indicator that women are on fire. And so I think for us, what we've really found is that women are looking for each other all over the country. We're mad as hell, and we're trying to figure out who else is as mad as I am, and are you all willing to do something with me? I'm not totally sure what to do, but I know I can't do nothing. And so I think for us, Supermajority is really about trying to be that glue and breaking the isolation that women feel, but also giving us the tools so that we can be powerful. So whether that means learning how to set up phone banks so that we can be calling our representatives every single hour on the hour, outraged about the fact that children don't have toothpaste and soap. Whether it means that we get together to learn how do we take over our school board or our water board or our city council because we're tired of being last in line. That is really what Supermajority is ready and willing to do, is to connect us, break isolation, build community, and most importantly, make us the powerful force that we already know we are when we're together and fighting with one another. Not with each other, but
That's
next
awesome.
to each other.
Yeah. So, and I really love the term supermajority. It's so fabulous. It says so much right there. But it's such an interesting time. It's obviously a devastating time for women's rights right now, but it's also been one of the most catalyzing times. Right. 1 in 5 Americans have participated in a protest since 2016. Women have donated 100 million more in 2018 than they did in 2016. And the midterms, we saw the midterms, that's why I'm wearing white, because we saw this record-breaking number of women that took over and moved into Congress. But yet still there's this feeling of hopelessness. So we have this extreme mobilization, catalyzation, yet we also have this sense of hopelessness. So how will you step into that? What are your thoughts about this time for you?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I do think, yes, some people, I wouldn't say people feel hopeless. I feel like what women are saying is they're raising their hand and saying, tell me what more to do. You know, I've marched, I've gone to my town hall meeting, I've contributed, I've written my letter, but now how are we really going to change the power dynamic? And so I actually find that what we're seeing around the country, and Alicia and I have been traveling to states all across America. We'll be back together in Texas this Saturday with hundreds of women to train them on advocacy skills and on building a broader network. But I think really what we're seeing is women are saying, what's the last piece of this? And to me, if we don't actually understand the power of our vote and building political power, then we have fallen short in this process. But the other thing is, and again, Alicia, you'll have your own perspective on this, is that I think a lot of women feel like, actually this older woman in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, said this to me one day as we were kind of doing a little mini focus group, and she said, look, I know what I'm going to do this election. She said, I've done it every year. I'm going to run the phone banks. I'm going to recruit all the block walkers. I'm basically, though, working within a system that was built by men for men. And when is anything going to change? And I think what we're hearing from women around the country is on the issues that fundamentally we get up and worry about every day: access to affordable health care, the ability to make our own decisions about our body, Alabama and beyond. The fact that 2/3 of minimum wage workers in this country are women, and they haven't had a raise in 10 years. And if you're a mother working for minimum wage, you're spending 60% of your salary on childcare, and it's probably really bad childcare at that. And so I think really the other conceit of supermajority is how do we actually galvanize women, not just to do our part, because we're doing more than our part, but actually do it around a set of a women's agenda. What would equality for women in this country really look like? None of us know. We've never lived in that country. But I think increasingly what women are saying is we kind of want to do, not just kind of, we want to do more than resist. We actually want to imagine what a country could look like where women were equal and where we actually could live in that country. And let's go build that. And that, to me, is the work that we're about doing.
That's beautiful. So let's talk about that. You've talked about building this women's agenda. Cecile, you just mentioned a few things: women's health, obviously right to choice of our bodies, childcare, wages. It's funny to imagine the room that lives in where we're imagining what the women's agenda is. How are you going to build that women's agenda, and what are some of the key pieces of it?
Well, the first thing we're going to make clear is that the issues that impact women are issues of national importance, and it's time that everybody treated them that way. And I think it starts with us treating them that way, right? Not talking about them as women's issues, but really talking about them as issues that are integral to the future of this country. The second thing I think we definitely are excited to do, as Cecile said, is to travel around and talk to people. You know, Cecile, you told me a story the other day about a woman that you had met who literally told you, like, I don't control the channel changer in my house. So when you're talking to me about being... But when you're talking to me about being a part of a supermajority, that's not something that had occurred to me. I might be being told that I'm powerful. I might be being told that I'm a force to be reckoned with. But to be frank, I've got to change conditions in my house. I've got to change conditions in my neighborhood. I've got to change conditions in the place that I worship. And so we need to go to those places and be talking to folks about what it is that they want to see. Third thing is, it cannot be a long laundry list of every issue that ever occurred to anybody, right? I think we know that there are certain issues that people are galvanized around right now, and that what's really important is that we frame them and that we talk about them from the experiences that we are having with them. We cannot just talk about healthcare. We've got to talk about the fact that in the South, women, and particularly Black women and women of color, are being denied access to quality health care because of political games that are being played in Washington. We've got to be able to talk about the fact that the people who are most impacted by climate change, right, are women and our families, and particularly poor women, and women of color. So our agenda has to not just be representational, and I think we've got to really kind of dig in on that. It has to reflect the way that we experience these issues every single day in order to get people galvanized around them. I think we already know that folk are ready to fight, and what we need is that bat signal that says this is what we're fighting for, and not just this is what we don't want. We're all clear about that. Anybody not clear about what you're not into? Anyone? And I think ultimately when we get concrete around what are the top 5 things that we are going to make sure that in 2020 nobody is going to make a decision about unless women say yes? You know what I mean? Like, let's just sit with that. What if, to make a decision in this country, you couldn't not have the consent of women, trans folks, gender nonconforming folks? Like, what if you really couldn't make any decision without the majority of the country? Shocking.
Beautiful, beautiful thought. So, Alicia, let me push back with you guys a little bit on that, to the point of not the hopelessness, but the moment we're in, which is, women have been the majority of voters in every national election since 1964. So what makes you think that now is the time that we'll actually harness that power for candidates and policies that reflect what we might call feminist values? Trump won 35% of college-educated white women and 56% of white women without a college degree in 2016, or so we think. We don't know if those are really the numbers. But what makes you think that we can mobilize in that way now? And behind that question is, please tell me how we can change that now.
I have so many thoughts about this, and so I think it's important. One, though, just kind of going back to Alicia's point and your question to her, is like, I think that we are masking how much agreement there is by women all across the country, across race, across geography, across income, across generation, and we get caught up in this sort of political news cycle, which is all about this sort of highly partisan divide, and that is not where most women live, I believe. That said, I think for a lot of white women, it was a real wake-up call when they realized that a plurality of white women had voted to elect Donald Trump. I will say I think a lot of those women have buyer's remorse, okay? So I don't think it was. However, yes, and we can't count on that. But I do think it's really important that we actually begin to set the record straight, not only the historic record, but what is happening right now. African-American women in this country have been the most reliable voters and the most progressive voters for the entire history of America. And that is, so to me, what's important is that we acknowledge that reality and we all commit to do better. And one of the things that I think, one of the reasons I am so excited about supermajority is to really be able to work with Alicia and other women across this country who really, we are committed to building a multiracial, intergenerational community of women, because I think what we have in common is so much greater than what the pundits would tell you keep us apart. But one other little fact, which I think is important to recognize, because I think a lot of things have changed since 2016. We saw, in the midterm elections, obviously, were extraordinary. If you look back on the history of midterms elections, in 20, I guess that would have been 2010, actually white women voted by, I believe, 19 points. They voted for Republicans. In 2014, they voted actually by 14 points. This last election, white women split their votes evenly. That's a 14-point difference. Now, that to me says that there is hope, an opportunity for women across the board to work together around a women's agenda. But we can't assume it's going to happen without women beginning to recognize how much we actually can do when we stand together.
Beautifully said. Alicia, you want to jump in on that point at all?
No.
Okay, great. All right, let's talk about 2020. Anybody want to go there? I don't know if any of the rest of the people in this audience are feeling this or experiencing this in the same way I am, but I find myself at dinner tables and everybody's sort of talking about who are the candidates, what we're doing, and often it devolves into a debate, and it's something like this: is America ready for a gay guy, or are they ready for a woman first? And it feels like this flashback, this traumatic stress disorder we're having to the Obama-Clinton runoff. So give me some hope that we can move beyond this conversation into 2020. And what are your thoughts about as we're moving into the election cycle?
Sure. Let's get concrete here, shall we? It's long past time that our political system and our political representatives reflected what is going on in this country. To be honest, I can't believe we've gotten to 2019, and it is the first time that we have had an openly gay person running for president. It is the first time that we have had 2 black candidates running for president. It's the first time we've had as many women running for president. It's 2019, not 1954. Are we ready? Of course we're ready. The question we should be asking ourselves is what's been getting in the way of this happening already? Now, I'll be frank, there are a lot of conversations happening in our political discourse about identity politics, and does that split us or does it bring us together? And all I can say to that is, you know, we are whole people, meaning I don't get to walk out of my house each day and decide I'm not going to be a woman today, I'm not going to be black today, I'm not going to be queer today. I don't get to do that, right? But I do get to demand that the people who represent me don't try to look through me, but try to have a conversation with me about how to make my life better. That's what we deserve from a political system. So I think we've got to be really careful, because sometimes those of us that want to see change happen, we're adopting talking points that come from the right. And we're saying, okay, everybody, this is the way to get us together. Let's just not look at the obvious. The obvious is the country has changed. The country is changing, and it is changing for the better. And the reason that there is such strife around that change is because there are people for whom that change is threatening their ability to run the country. So I think that's a good thing. And so I think what it means is that as we're looking at this political landscape, we should be saying more of that on every level. We want more women running at every level. We want more gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender folks running at every level. We want more immigrants running at every level, because that is who the country is. And if we have people representing us that represent what the country looks like, it is going to be better for us. Now, with that being said, it's not just about representation. It is also very much about what is their agenda, and that is what Supermajority is trying to do, is to clarify what is the agenda that you need to carry. You're not off the hook just because you're a woman running for president. You need to be making sure that your top issues are the issues that represent the majority of the country, and frankly, same thing for the dudes.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'll be exciting. I mean, we're going to see this week history made when we have 6 women on the debate stage,
So
when we
awesome.
have Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, when we have, you know, it's going to be so different. But I am so ready for a debate where when the question comes up about equal pay or access to affordable childcare, that it's asked to the white guy, right? Yeah. I am so sick of the women always getting the questions that are supposedly women's issues. Yep. And I hope that we are looking at a moment in which we can move beyond that and say, I don't care who it is that's elected president of the United States, if they don't put some of these issues front and center, then it really, we won't have made the change that we want to make. But I think folks are ready, and I think it's an exciting time. I feel like folks are ready for change. And the only other thing I would say about 2018 that was really important is that you saw 3 candidates run in states where they changed the electorate. Stacey Abrams in Georgia, and if we had counted every vote in Georgia, Stacey Abrams would be governor today, without a doubt. So that's democracy reform we got to work on. We saw Andrew Gillum completely change the electorate in Florida. And in my own home state of Texas, Beto O'Rourke, give Ted Cruz a run for his money and change how people think about politics in those states. So I guess just back to your point, Peggy, if we keep thinking about the same box, people say, well, there's one person that fits in that box. But if we actually think about building a democracy where more people participate, it completely changes the picture.
That's right.
Beautiful. A new box. We're building a new box.
A new box.
So let's talk about how supermajority is going to do that. What are some of the on-the-ground strategy? How are you rolling this out? When people go back home, what are they going to find?
Yeah. Well, it's the most important thing is, so here's our big audacious goal is we're going to aggregate and organize 2 million women in this country over the next 12 months, because as Alicia says, if you got 2 million women in this country, you can do anything. And that's really the idea. But 2 million women who are trained, organized, connected, who feel like they are part of a supermajority, because frankly, women are already doing this work. They're just doing it in isolation. So that by next fall, we can run the largest in history women-to-women voter contact and mobilization program we've ever seen, not coincidentally on the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, right? And change the election. So that's the main
awesome.
conceit. And we'll be doing online and offline engagement and training. We're headed to Austin, Detroit, Portland, Maine, Denver just in the next few weeks to be able to provide the skills and support that women feel like they need and do need to be part of something bigger than what they're doing by themselves.
So awesome. And you just launched this a couple weeks ago, right? So you already have had how many people join?
A bunch
How's
of
it
folks.
going?
Yeah, and then the first 4 weeks we had 100,000 folks join.
Wow.
And so it's not a question of like if, it's like actually how. It's a question of, and I'm sure, I know Alicia sees it everywhere we go. It's just women raising their hands, and not just women. It's really fascinating. About 30% of the folks who signed up do not use she, her pronouns. And so I just want to say, because we asked folks to talk about their issues and what they want to see, as Alicia says, these are not issues that affect only women. These are issues that affect our economy, our society, our culture, and frankly, the political direction of America.
That's right.
So do you think we can break out of that box so that these are not just women's issues, these are everyone's issues? How can we do that? Do you think we can?
We're betting on it, and we're doing it right now. So if you haven't signed up for Supermajority, you should do that now. Just go to supermajority.com. I'm serious. Where's your phone?
It's free.
Cute. It's free, and the first thing we're going to ask you is like, what is your superpower? Then we're going to invite you onto a call so you can learn more about who we are, you can meet each other, and you can get activated and plugged in. So this isn't just like a mailing list or a newsletter you're going to join and people are going to tell you what we're doing every 3 months. We're ready to sign you up if you're ready to get activated.
And I think it's just a false dichotomy on these economic issues. I mean, what are I think you mentioned, or maybe they did in the past panel, maybe Ann did. You know, women at this point earn 80 cents on the dollar that a man earns. And it's 2019. I think the estimates are if we kept going at this rate, it would take another 200 years to get to pay equity, which just seems too damn long. But if you're a woman of color, of course, it's much, much worse. I mean, Latinas, I think, make 54 cents on the dollar. African American women, 64. I know, can you believe this? But you know what? It's not just a women's issue. These are women who are supporting households and families and who have other people depending on them. So we got to quit talking about equal pay as something that only women care about. Yeah. Everybody should care about, and everyone does.
Yep. Incredible. You guys are amazing. I want to open it up to all of you to have some chance for questions. You know, we don't have too much time, plus please forgive us because we got to get these guys to the next session. But please raise your hands. You've got some mics, and it's a little hard to see, but I think this woman right here, she was one of the first. Please.
Hey. And tell us who you are.
Yeah, tell us who you are. Hi, you've been in all our sessions. Nice to see you.
I'm Phyllis Abramson. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yay, thank you, Phyllis.
And I do want to say that women were the majority of voters up to 2016, I shouldn't say up to 2016, but up to age 64. Mm-hmm. Over age 64, men were the majority. So I'm just asking that the older voter, who is a good voter, we always count on them, be very much a part of your conversation.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, let's hear it for that, because I think, that is one of the powerful things happening, is being in a room in Des Moines, Iowa, with women who are who are in their teens and are just getting engaged, with women who are in their 70s who've been fighting these fights forever. The power and the energy is so palpable and important, and everyone has something to contribute. But you're absolutely right. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Other questions? If you've got the mic, go ahead and pass it to yeah, there we go. Great. Tell us who you are.
I'm Juanita Francis. Hi, Cecile.
Oh my God, Nita, I can't believe it. Sorry. we go way, way back.
I was on her board, national board, back in the day when things were a lot better.
I worked for her. That's
No.
really the way it goes.
And my question right now is, we have to get someone that's not Trump elected.
Correct.
So why are we, and this comes from our mutual interest in women's health, abortion, all of those things, why are we pushing some candidates, i.e. Biden, to have to say we've got to repeal the Hyde Amendment? We can do that after somebody's elected, but we can't get elected on that kind of statement, is my opinion. We need to hammer away on all the things that he has done, that T has done wrong, and that has wounded us, but we won't get elected on reversing things and getting rid of stigma, because we can't get there yet until we are in the driver's seat.
Great.
So, I mean, Anita has devoted her life to these issues, and I want to give you so much props and kudos for that. I don't think that the Hyde Amendment is going to be the issue on which this election turns, and I think folks will try to make it that. I think, as we've seen, our president tries to make it about infanticide. But the truth is, when you actually talk to women and men in this country, really what I think this is going to turn on, most importantly, is whether folks in this country are going to lose a right they've had for more than 40 years, which is being able to make their own decisions about their bodies. But it is up to us, Nita, to make sure that we stand true to all of our fundamental principles, and we also frame this in a way that people understand what is actually at stake. That women in Missouri quite likely will lose access to safe and legal abortion, the first state since Roe was decided. So I think it's really important, again, that we do stand on principle. We talk about the importance of economic fairness, but we also don't let, frankly, folks who don't care about women or, in my opinion, children, shape the debate. And that's on all of us.
Absolutely great. Let's go over here to this side of the.
Yeah.
You see, go ahead. Please pass the mic, please. You have a mic. Great.
Hi, my name is Eva Lewis. I am a candidate for my BA in sociology and master's in nonprofit leadership at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm also the CEO and founder of the I Project. And my question is about language. How can we be inclusive of people that just are not cis men when we talk about the women's rights movement? Because sometimes I think, even though you can say woman and be like, oh, but we're including other people, but that's kind of putting them on the back burner. So what language can we use to just encompass all people that are just not cis men?
I think it's an important question. So two things. One, I think we can start being much more specific that this is a fight for gender equality, and there are way more genders than two. And for some of us, we're like, wait, what? But if there was a time to learn, now is the time. We have an epidemic happening right now where there are people who are being left out of political conversations and locked out of opportunity to live full and dignified lives. There's been 10 Black trans women that have been murdered just this year, and at least 7 just this month. So, and that's not because there's a serial killer out there killing trans women. It's not because trans women are killing each other. It's because trans women don't have the things they need to live well. So I think for us, what we are really trying to do is build something that can be a container for a lot of people, and walk that fine line of also understanding that women are on fire, and whether that be trans women, whether that be Muslim women, whether that be cis women, it is true because of the ways in which women have been oppressed, excluded, marginalized, etc. Women are not the only people being marginalized, right? And so the trick to building any kind of movement is by letting people know that this is a home for you, and I think the way that we do that is through language, but I think it's also through practice. So what I would say to you is hold us accountable, make sure that we are actually organizing more than cis women and more than cis men so that we can actually build an equitable movement that really does lift all boats. I do want to say one more thing. I know there's probably another question. I don't think we can make this election just about Trump. To be honest, I think that is not a good strategy for us because everybody knows what's wrong. Nobody's unclear about what's not working for us in the White House. What people are unclear about is what can we do about it and what's possible? And so what I like to say is, if he can get elected president, we can accomplish anything. And I think this is a time for us to be bold. I don't think it's a time for us to be like way out there in the ether, but I do think that people are looking for change. I think that's why we had so many women and so many women of color who were elected in the last cycle. And a lot of people told every single one of those women, it's not your time. It's not your time. We have to beat Trump. This is not your time. And to be frank, these are the women who are moving the sharpest edge of what a liberation agenda can look like in this country. So I think we've also got to challenge ourselves not to get caught up in their spin cycle, but to create our own agenda and vision for what is possible and give people an opportunity to galvanize around it. And I think we'll win that way.
So beautifully said, Alicia. Last words, Cecile.
No, this is look, it's an exciting time. And I think just to echo that is that this has to be more, supermajority is about more than this election. I mean, honestly, things weren't that great for women and women of color before this president. And so I think that our aspirations have to be higher than simply changing who is in the White House. And again, on what terms? Like, what would it really look like for us to have true gender equity in this country? Imagine what power that would unleash and how exciting that would be. And I guess the last thing I'll say is I've been an organizer my whole life. I have never seen women taking more joy in the success of other women, and that is going to propel us in amazing ways.
So beautifully said. Alicia, Cecile, you both are amazing, and we are so honored you're here with us today. Let's give a round of applause for these two incredible heroines.